Do I need to look at the camera or look at Ralph?
You're gonna kind of do both, it's what you're gonna wind up doing.
Yeah. Look at both.
Okay, you're on.
Well, all right, this is, I'm Ralph Walton with the Overstreet History Center. We're going to be interviewing today Lee Overstreet. And this is March 16, I think it is, March 16 of 2023. And we're glad to have Lee with us here this morning for the purpose of conducting this interview with him. And so we're going to get started with that at this time. And good morning, Lee.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here with us. You and I have known one another a long time, and although I'm not a native, you are, but you know, we're proud to be here and be able to conduct this interview. Of course, let me just ask you, where were you born, Lee? Were you born here in Granbury, or?
I was actually born in Harris Hospital in Fort Worth.
Were you? Okay.
But lived here in Granbury all my life.
So your mom went to the hospital in Fort Worth.
In Fort Worth.
Harris, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
At that day in time, Granbury was probably not the best day to seek medical attention.
Yeah, there weren't many physicians here at that time,
No.
probably either, were there? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But, looks like everything went fine.
It worked fine.
You're doing good. Okay.
I've grown up, do well, and done well. Have not missed many meals, so it's all been good.
Well, now let's see. Now, who were your parents, brother?
Maxie and Jackie Overstreet, which my mother's maiden name was Durham, which her family came here to Hood County in the early to mid 30s.
Okay.
Been here.
Yeah.
My father was from north of Fort Worth, Haslett area, Saginaw, Haslett.
Yeah. Did he work down here in Hood County, or did he have a job over in Fort Worth, or what?
Yeah, I worked here, and my whole life we farmed and ranched, and that's what basically the majority of my life growing up. That's all we did. Basically.
So your family had real estate, had a ranch or a farm here
Yes,
in Hood County.
Yep.
Okay.
I grew up right here on the banks of the Brazos River,
Yeah.
pre-lake.
When it was the river,
Yes.
pre-lake, as you said. Yeah. Okay. Well, what was the whole Hood County like way back in those days, before the lake came in, pre-lake? What was
It was
what was it like?
rural agriculture community on the river. Of course, city of Granbury was pretty small then, probably 2,000 people. I would imagine 2,000 plus. Wasn't a lot happening here. But it was, I could remember my grandmother saying that Granbury started growing after the lake came in. She passed away in '83, which the lake filled up in '69. But I can remember her saying, she had a house here in town, but she said back before Granbury started growing so much that you could see a car coming down the street, and before you saw that car, you knew whose car it was and who was in it. And it started changing rapidly once the lake came in.
Yeah. And that's going to continue, it looks like. But all right. So, and as a kid, did you work outside of the family, or did you have jobs in the town itself? Or
No, my brother and I, growing up, of course, we were farming and ranching. For a big part of my life growing up, we had a dairy as well. And we had no days off. You were always had something to take care of, either cattle to feed, or fences to fix, or hay to cut, or hay to be hauled, or whatever. And so we basically didn't have any outside jobs.
worked in the family business, in
Yeah.
effect.
And that wasn't really a job. Jobs you get paid for. We didn't must get paid for doing what we did. It was just a part of what we did. So,
Part of the
yeah.
requirements of being in the Overstreet family, I guess. Yeah.
But part is we got older and got to the age where we could drive. But we did haul hay during the summer, and not only we hauled our own hay for my dad and granddad, but we would haul hay for other people. And so that's really the only outside money that we had. And then later in life, I say later, when I was in high school, I worked some for a construction company. Of course, at that time, we started getting out of the farming and ranching business and more into real estate. Or my family did, my father did. And so there wasn't as much there. So that's when, I guess it was my late teen years or high school years before I really got a outside job doing anything other than the family business or hauling hay. Or hauling peanuts. That was something else we did too in the fall, because peanuts were a big business in Hood County back then. I don't know exactly how many acres, but thousands of acres of peanuts were farmed every year in Hood County. And I don't know that it's very minimal now, if any, in these days.
How many acres of land did your family own in Hood County at that time?
Oh, probably 700-800 acres. Primarily all of it was on the river, but then we had a lot of lease property too. So we were always had something to do, you know, when you've got your own property plus a lot of lease property, and we had a lot of chores in the state to always take care of.
Who was the source of the ownership of that property originally? Who?
It was my grandfather.
Your grandfather? Okay. What was his name?
E.E. Durham, Ernest Durham.
Ernest Durham.
They called him E.E., but it was Ernest Durham. And he actually, when he came to Granbury, he was the original Chevrolet dealer here in Granbury.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And he sold out to the Durants in 1960. His health
Where
store.
was the dealership located?
Right on the square. Where
Right on the square.
currently the Panhandle is where the dealership was. That was his showroom. And then around on Pearl Street, where the Brew Drinkery is, that was his parts and mechanic shop. Those buildings actually connect. They've been walled off since then, but those buildings connected, so he had a frontage on the square on Crockett Street, and then frontage also for the parts department and service area on Pearl Street. And lived in the house that was right next to that, which is real estate office now.
Pearl Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So he had that dealership then from what time did he?
Oh, mid-30s.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know what mid to latter 30s when the dealership started, and then after he sold out the dealership, then he did go back later and put in a GMC and Rambler dealership.
Where was that located?
Same place.
Was that right? So when the Durants bought the dealership there that was on the square, where did they locate that?
It's actually down where the conference center is now.
Oh, okay.
Moved down there, built a building, and that's where the dealership moved.
When did they move out onto the highway?
Oh, I'm not sure, maybe 70s probably. Yeah.
All right.
It's hard to recollect, but I graduated high school here in '72. So I would say it was probably in the 70s, and they outgrew that space down there. And maybe been right about the time the lake came, so it could have been the late 60s.
All right, well, good. Well, so as far as your jobs, and you had plenty of jobs, didn't you pay too well for them, sounds like, but there was plenty to do in the family business, in other words.
There was always something to do.
Yeah.
And I say we didn't get anything, and my dad would let us work out. Of course, we had the dairy, and we would have, of course, those cows calving, being the dairy cows. Well, then you have to do something with those calves. You can't leave them on the cow because they go into the dairy. So we had a lot of bottle calves we raised on a bottle, and so he'd let us sometimes work out calves out of that deal, and we'd get so much a day for working or helping at the dairy that we'd work it out. So I've developed a pretty significant herd of cattle out of that deal by raising calves from bottle on the adulthood, and started my own little herd of cattle.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, you had two brothers, right?
Yes.
Is that it? There's three sons in the family?
Yep.
Yeah.
My older brother, he's deceased, and Joe, younger brother, still here in Granbury, and actually teaches at high school, has for several years.
Mm-hmm. What he teaches, you say?
Yeah.
What does he teach?
He's in the sciences. I mean, he teaches biology. I don't know if he's a chemistry or whatnot, but he's in the science end of it. So
Did your mom work outside the home?
Not much. There was always plenty to do, and in addition to the farming and ranch that we had for several years, we also had a cattle auction as well. And she kept the books for that auction, and there was quite a bit to do for it as well.
Now, who was the business person in your family? Was it your dad or your mom or both or what?
Both, yeah. And it was, you know, we were a working family, so even though my mother didn't work outside the home, again, there was always plenty to do. And when we had the dairy, I mean, she did her time in the dairy barn as well, believe it or not. And everybody pitched in, and we just, you do whatever you need to do.
Well, that was a good learning process for you, I would assume.
It was.
In regard to business and
Yes.
and what it takes to be a success. Well, now, as far as, of course, Granbury always has got something going on all the time, some kind of celebration of some kind. Did you all celebrate holidays or anything special or unique in the family?
We
Growing
did.
up?
Growing up, there weren't all the festivities going on like there are in Granbury today.
Yeah.
But, you know, basically we were tied basically to our farming and ranching duties. And so when the holidays came around, it wasn't like we could just take off and go somewhere or whatever, but most of the family was here. And so, you know, we'd have family dinners, and so those were good times, because that's really about the only time we seemed to relax, because we didn't have to work as hard that day. You still had things you had to do. Cattle and horses had to be fed, and
Even if it was Christmas Day, huh?
it didn't matter. And when the bad weather happened and we had snow and ice, well, it didn't. That's when you worked extra hard, because you had to make sure you fed cattle and do things. So I've had plenty of experience driving on snow and ice.
Yeah. I'm sure, that's for sure. Well, all right, and as far as just anything that you can recall, as far as you got your two brothers there, the three of you, did you ever engage in any kind of mischievous activities of any kind that got you into trouble that you can talk about?
Well, most of the trouble I got in was at home, not necessarily with the law, but you know, we were always, yeah, I can say always. My brother and I were getting into a lot. My older brother, he and I were just 14 months apart.
Oh.
My younger brother's 5 years, so he was a little bit young to be getting into things like we were. But yeah, when we were teenagers, well, we were always probably doing something that we shouldn't be doing, but it wasn't anything terrible.
Yeah. You didn't break any laws or anything like that?
No.
That you're willing to admit to anyway?
Not that I want to admit.
Okay. Well, your early life, of course, we've kind of discussed that already. You mentioned that you've gotten into the real estate business. How far back does that go?
I got in January of 1988. And reason being, I actually had a construction company at that time, which was basically a welding business and steel erection, but did a lot of farm and ranch construction, doing pipe fences and cattle pens. And
Was this your business now you're talking about? Yeah.
But still was involved in the cattle and the horse business, and also doing that. And anyway, had a back injury just from, you know, doing the kind of work I'd done all my life and all the things I'd done. And finally went to see a neurosurgeon, and was told that I would have to quit doing what I was doing or have major back surgery. And said I would still probably even have to stop doing the kind of work that I was doing, construction work, due to that back issue. And so I started looking for another line of work, and my dad had been in real estate, or got into real estate whenever the lake came in.
Oh, he had been in real estate business too?
Yeah, and before his death, he died at an early age, or young age. And so real estate was really the next thing that I was associated with, so I went to real estate school and talked to several people about real estate prior to that. And
Was there anybody in particular that you
just
got advice from?
general, some people that were in the business that I had known through my dad. And
Here in Hood County, folks here?
yeah, and anyway, at that time in '88, well, this was in '87 when I was going to real estate school, but that was after the market crash, oil crash back in the mid-'80s, and the real estate business was not good, the cattle business was not good, and the whole economy was really not very good.
That's
And,
sure, I remember it well.
Yeah, as the economy was coming out of that, like I said, got my license and was going into the business in January of 1988. And several people in the real estate business told me that we're getting at the perfect time because it can't get any worse. Well, let me tell you, it did. Because it still had some declines. It was pretty tough for the first couple of years. And starting a new career, and something that's basically was not good at that time either. But after a couple of years, things started turning around, and the economy.
Were you working on your own, or were you working with?
No, I was
some
with
other
the company.
realtors?
There was a Cinch 21. It was Bradley Roten. Mike Roten was a broker for it, who'd been here for several years. Actually was the city manager at one time
Right.
here in Granbury, and he had a Cinch 21 office. And so I started there and spent 2 or 3 years there getting, finishing my education, moving forward. Once you get licensed, you really don't know anything, so you're still learning the business. And after that, went on to another company and eventually started my own real estate business. But due to that back injury, that propelled me into the real estate business, which is probably, at the time, it was pretty devastating, but it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me to get into the real estate business. So
Yeah,
I've been
get into
in
real estate.
35 years now, continuously, and I've seen more than one bad market. I started in a bad market and haven't seen one in the last few years, or it is pretty tough now with interest rates and things, but it's
So
It's been a
how
good
is the
business.
business, the real estate business today? I mean,
it's good. You've got to work at it, and there's a lot of competition out
a
there,
lot of competition.
and that's probably the toughest thing right now. But I've been in it so long, I'm well established, and so it's let's just say I'm not ready to retire, but I'm getting into the end and not the beginning of my career in real estate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change and do anything else at this point.
Right, yeah. Well, and through your career in real estate, Lee, have there been any other than the ones we've talked about, that have been influential to you in terms of getting in the business and helping you along the way, and just improving your skills in the field? Is there any particular people that?
I don't know if there's any one individual that stands out, but I'm always open to listening and learning, and I've continued to take real estate classes, and they've gotten some designations, real estate designations, or one in particular, graduate of the Realtor Institute. And I think you just got to continue. And the biggest thing that's changed in real estate since I got into it is technology. And it's so much different now, where when I got into it, the information we had for properties was in a book. There weren't computers, there weren't cell phones, and basically you got a book every 2 weeks, and when you got that book, the information was 1 week old. Because we'd send all that information off, have it printed, and get the book back, and so when you received it, it was 1 week old, and you would not get another for 2 weeks, and that information was 1 week old then. And now, through technology, our property information updates every 15 minutes. So it's at your hand all the time, and technology has changed, not only changed real estate, but it's just changed everything.
Yeah, it changed the legal profession too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're exactly right. Of course, you've been real active also in the community here. I know that from, just having been associated with you myself. What kind of involvement have you had in the civic community itself, Lee, during your career?
Been right now, which for years, the longest one that I've been involved with would be the Chamber of Commerce. And so that's the biggest contribution that I've had for the civic groups. Yeah. I'm also involved, of course, a member of our Association of Realtors, which is a professional group. But the Chamber, I've served, I don't have any different terms on the board. I've actually been the chairman of the chamber 3 times, probably enough.
Are you still
I'm
chairman of the board?
No, I'm still on the board, but I haven't been, it was several years since I've been chairman, but I've been on the board off and on, and currently on the board again now. But I enjoy serving on the chamber, and, you know, I think it has.
What do you like about it best?
I think for what it does for the community, the promotion, and basically it in all encompassing for all businesses, individuals, you know, trades. It just, I think when I first joined the chamber, we were probably 150 members. We're almost 1,000 now. So it's changed dramatically with the growth of the community. And so it's quite a large organization, and do a lot.
Yeah, I remember being real active in the chamber. In fact, I was the president, I think is what they called it back then, of the chamber, you know. But there was probably about 100 members at that time,
Yeah.
as I recall.
Yeah. But our real estate association has changed too, because when I first got involved with it, there were 50-something members back in the late 80s when I joined. And now we've got over 400, getting close to 500 members in our local real estate association.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been involved. I'm a member of Rotary. I'm a past president of our Rotary Club. Been on the United Way board. I've been president of it. I've served on the Hood County Child Protectives Board. I serve on the advisory board for AMUD, and I just do those things because I think you need to give back to the community for all that you're doing.
Which of those things that you've been involved in, like that, civically or whatever, which of them do you feel that you have the most pride in the involvement that you have? Is there anyone in particular that?
Probably number one would be the chamber, just because of the years of commitment and service and what I've done there, but also our association of realtors. We've really grown and accomplished a lot of things, and I'm involved with our state association as well, State Realtor Association, but our local association over the years has gotten more and more involved, and so it's good. I've actually served as president of our Realtor Association twice as well. And again, it's just giving back to the community, giving back to your profession.
Right. Yeah. Trying to improve and help people out that need help in the real estate area. Yeah. I don't think I ever asked you about your personal life, your married life, and all that, and your children and all, and your grandchildren. Tell me a little bit about that, Lee.
Married first time when I was 18, still in college. Wouldn't take that back at all, but I don't recommend getting married when you're 18 years old and in college. So it was, you know, tough times but good times. I did continue college. I never was able to graduate, but you know, ended up going to college a couple of years. 2 sons. One is deceased. He has 4 children, which he was in the Chicago area, and all those 4 grandchildren are there now. Another son, Brady, who is here in Granbury, working here, has a successful construction business. No grandkids with Brady yet. Still waiting on that. And then I remarried last year, and my wife has 2 children, boy and girl, twins, and they just had a granddaughter that just turned 6 months old, yesterday as a matter of fact. And so I have a granddaughter there, and 2 stepchildren, boy and girl. They're 24, so they're younger than my family. So.
All right, great. Sounds like a great deal there. Looking at one other part of this discussion here, I think you've been involved politically too here in the community, haven't you?
I have been. Most of my political involvement has been helping candidates,
Right.
and that's what I
Have
did.
you run for public office?
I ran for city council at one time and I lost about 32 or 33 votes. And I decided was my last time to try to run for political office. But I enjoy helping candidates that I feel are good for, for our community, or good for Texas, or good for our country. I do it on a local, state, and national level too, on some that I have helped with their campaigns on that. So I've been very involved with that for many years.
Well, that's great, and I know you've been real active politically, like you said, not necessarily running for office, but supporting good candidates.
Yeah. Actually, it was the year before last, I won the award for the Grassroots Advocate of the Year for the Texas Association of Realtors for working on a couple of campaigns. One was for a state representative and one was for our congressman, U.S. Congressman August Pfluger.
Yeah.
Glenn Rogers and August Pfluger, but I did win that award from our state association, which was, it was a surprise to me. We got a big association.
That's great, yeah, that's great. Well, old Granbury, of course, it's not what it used to be, is it?
No.
Especially back in the 50s when you were growing up as a kid, it really was a lot different back in those days, I assume. Was that right?
Yes.
Yeah. What's in your lifetime? What are the changes that you've seen that occurred? Whether have they been good or have they been bad or maybe a little bit of both?
It depends on what you want to call good and bad. I grew up, of course, we were farming and ranching when I was growing up. I was born right in the middle of the drought in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, all my life I've heard about the drought. And you still hear about the drought in the 50s, which we eclipsed that back in 2012, 13, 14, along in there.
Mm-hmm.
Had another drought that was similar to the one in the 50s.
Yeah.
But born in the drought, when I was first born, until I was about a year and a half old, we lived in Lipan on a ranch my grandfather had in Lipan, and just through economic times and the drought and everything else, it was a pretty sizable ranch, and he lost that ranch, but he kept the best property, which is down here on the river. But all the time growing up, I was born in 54, so from 54 till 69, when the lake came in, Granbury was just a rural community. It was farming and ranching, and you had local merchants here.
Was there much going on in the square?
There was nothing about, well, up right before the lake came in, about half the businesses on the square or buildings were boarded up. Maybe not quite half, but a lot of them were.
Was the Opera House in operation?
Nope. It was a shell of a building, and there where it used to be the Nutshell restaurant, it's the Square restaurant now, that was a feed store.
Which one was
Where
it?
the Nutshell is, right
Oh, the
across.
Nutshell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there on the corner of Pearl and
Right.
Crockett.
Yeah. And about half of the buildings were boarded, you said, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a feed store, and there's a opening that went through to that. It's a retail business in there now, and that's where they stored the feed.
Mhm.
Nutshell was actually the nice part of it.
Oh my
But
goodness.
yeah, it's grown up, and so it was pretty simple here. Graduated in '72, and there were 60, maybe 63 people in my graduating class.
Mhm.
And now there's, I guess, close to 500, between 450 and 500.
Mhm.
There weren't 500 people in the whole high school when I graduated.
Yeah.
So it was pretty simple, and the biggest featuring thing to do was go to the movie theater here. There was one down on the square that was open in the winter, and when it warmed up, the drive-in would open.
Mhm.
And so the biggest thing that you had to do after school or in the evenings, of course we didn't get to do a lot because we always had work to do, but when you did, you just made the drag. And you went out to the drive-in and turned around and went down here to where the conference center is now and turned around
That
there.
was the drag, yeah.
Everybody just
Yeah.
drove up and down. That was the biggest fun we had in
Biggest
Granbury.
activity on Saturday night, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the growth, whether it's good or bad, back when I was in the construction business, I didn't do that much commercial construction, but a lot of it was farm and ranch construction, barns and cattle pens. Did some commercial buildings, but I didn't really care for all the traffic, and I made it a point to avoid the square on the weekends when Granbury started growing, because it was a lot better than it is now, but you know, at that time it was like I wanted to avoid all the tourists. And then as I got into the real estate business, and that was a big benefit to me, and I got to where, you know, this is all right. So, at one time I didn't really.
What was your opinion of it, and maybe your parents even, the idea of damming up the river and creating a lake and all that? What was the general overall attitude of?
Well, my grandfather was not in favor of it.
Is that
And
right?
he fought him as long as he could, as far as, of course, he had 3 properties that are on the lake, on the river. And so, you know, basically at that time, you were not looking long-term at the long-term benefits of it. Basically, the lake was about to cover up our farm that we'd grown. You know, that was what we did. Of course, he had the car dealership, but, you know, that was our livelihood. And I thought my job as a kid, you asked if I did anything mischievous. Well, Brazos River Authority was actually surveying all the land where the lake was going to be and putting out stakes, you know, surveying people's properties. And as a kid, you know, I was probably 12 years old, somewhere along in there, 11, 12 years old. And I thought I was doing the family a favor because I would go out there and pull up all those survey stakes. And at that time, I seriously thought that I could keep that lake from coming in by knocking down those survey stakes. Yeah. So anytime I saw one, I'd make sure and pull it up and go throw it away, burn it or whatever. But that's actually what I thought I was doing. I was doing the same with the family farm by kicking down survey stakes.
Did your parents ever know that you were doing that?
Oh, I didn't tell anybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, what was the overall sentiment, as best you can recall it, I mean, I guess, of the community itself in its entirety toward the creation of the lake? Was there an overall opinion about it, or was everybody just kind of up in the air about what?
I think it was good. You know, number one, it created a lot of jobs here, which was good for this community. A lot of people came in to build the dam, but you know, it created a lot of jobs for that construction. And soon after the lake, they started construction on, you know, Comanche Peak Nuclear Plant,
Right.
and that brought in a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds, and at one time, you know, into the thousands of people coming in for the construction of that. So overall, it's been good. But with growth, you get all types of people, and some good, some not so good. And I think that was a lot of the sentiment with the locals that started here when the lake came in. Well, you know, there was a element of people that was weekenders and, you know, maybe didn't fit the community. And so there was some resentment with some people early on. But I think that's all changed. It's just certainly changed for me.
And just the fact of the lake itself, the overall sentiment from what you're saying, it appears is that generally it was people who approved the idea of it.
Yeah.
Even the bigger landowners like your
Sure.
grandfather
Yeah.
could see the benefits of the lake coming in.
Yeah, and I mean, fortunately for him, because he was very much against it, but he actually passed away in 1968 on the farm, in our farmhouse at our home. He was happened to be there, and I don't remember what it was. We were having Sunday dinner or what day it was, but he actually passed away, had a heart attack there at our house when I was 14 years old. So he did not have to see the lake cover up his farm,
Yeah.
which in a way was a blessing.
Yeah. Right.
But on the other hand too, when, as I said, we didn't see the long-term benefits of the lake coming in at that time because it was taking away our family farm, but I can tell you, years later, it became very profitable to have lakefront property.
Yes, it did, didn't it? Yeah. I guess now that you can look back on it, you can see that it was really an advantage and a benefit to the entire community.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, not just yours, but all of them.
Yeah, it was.
Well, is there anything else, Lee, that you had in mind that you wanted to discuss with us, or anything else?
I think that's all I have, unless you have other questions for me.
Lee, this is Morris Walton. I'm sitting in on this interview. I just have a question. Back when you graduated from high school in 1972, are there any people here in Granbury today that you graduated with, that you ran around with? I mean, that we could talk to? Who would you, are there, I guess, that's just a question.
Probably one that's still here, there's one of, or a couple of them too, I was just thinking, but Bob Anderson, and which Bob grew up in Crescent, so I mean, he's long-term Hood County, I guess he's a Hood County native as well, but Bob and, in fact, Bob and I are still great friends, and Ralph and I have been in a weekly Bible study for 30 plus years. I think it will be 32 years, when Bob's been in that Bible study with us for probably 20 plus years. And Bob's still a great friend, and still do some things. And, you know, again, going back to, did I do anything mischievous when I was younger? Well, maybe with Bob, maybe with my brother. But we won't talk about it. Don't ask Bob. He won't tell you either.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But Cody Martin, which I know he's involved too with somebody with the History Center. Jake Caraway. Let me think of.
So you graduated with them, the people, the folks you just named.
Actually, they were a year ahead of me. Another one was Jesse Fant. Jesse's here has a business. He owns a Pirate Den, and Jesse was another one that I graduated with. But some were in my class, but most of those were a year ahead of me. And I don't know why I gravitated, and I ran around with more people from the class ahead of me than mine. In fact, I go to their class reunions.
Do you happen to, you were graduated in 72, the Opera House was reopened on June 19, 1975. So would you have been away, or were you actually in Granbury when they started the restoration of the Opera House?
I was here, yeah. I've been here basically all my life.
Okay. Do you
You
have
didn't
any,
go to the military or anything like
No.
that? Yeah.
No military service.
do you have any recollections of what was happening, you know, the restoration process, just seeing it going on? Do you have recollections of that?
Oh, yes, yeah. That one, and Mary Lee Watkins, when she was, you know, restoring the nut house and starting it, and in fact, it was my grandmother was still alive. She passed away in '83, but when the nut house was still in operation, and we went there at least once a week. And funny
You
story.
some of that cold water cornbread?
Cornbread and
Yeah.
buttermilk pie. And I can tell you something about, another story about my grandmother. Well, she did not want to be outdone in anything, so we used to brag on the buttermilk pie when we'd go there. And she finally made the comment, said, I can make better buttermilk pie than that. Well, buttermilk pie became her signature dish, because it seemed like every week we'd have buttermilk pie.
She'd
But she
show
just
y'all.
wanted to show everybody, said, this is a buttermilk pie. I don't know if it was any better, they were both great, but you know, we had to brag on her and tell her how much better it was.
Well, what would be, I mean, I've read, and I'm sure you have, Joe Nutt's book, The Restoration of an Opera House, a little book he done, where he discusses the people that were involved in the restoration project. I mean, the citizens of Granbury, you know, how they pitched in and made that possible. Do you recall that event? Do you recall the people working on it, and
Yes.
you seeing that going on?
I can remember the fundraisers they did, and I can remember my mother basically stitching a seat cover for the Opera House.
Mhm.
And I don't remember what.
Needle pointing it,
Needle pointing.
yeah.
And I don't remember what it was, if you had to pay to do that, or they were just asking people to do that, but I'm sure it was something where you did a donation, you got to do a needle point, and I don't remember if it had her name on it or what it was, but I remember her stitching the seat cover for the Opera House. So the original Opera House had hand-stitched needle point seat covers, so I'm sure that was, but yes, there was a big fundraising activity, and back then, there weren't a lot of organizations that did a lot of fundraising, absolutely nothing like it is now. You know, you've got something every other week if you want to go to some sort of fundraiser for one of these local nonprofits, which is great, and I'm involved with several of them and attend them, so nothing against those, but, and I can remember too, and it was Judge Meyer, Milt Meyer, back when we started the 4th of July, and I was not directly involved with the chamber at that time, and I don't know if it was a chamber event, but you know, the chamber has since took it over as does the 4th of July event, but we would be down there the night before, you know, whatever the night before the 4th was, marking off that square for all the booths or whatever we did, but I can remember it was Gene Kate and Gene and Charlie and Neil and B. Allen and Milt Meyer, and I'm trying to think, I'm sure there were other people.
Ken Hill.
Probably so, but it was kind of a fun event, and seemed like I remember a cold beer or something showing up every now and then when we were doing that. You know, it was hot, it was July.
Especially in July, you know.
It was July, and it was that, but Granbury was a lot different then, and the 4th of July parade, you know, might have lasted 20 minutes back then, I don't know, instead of an hour and something now. But it was a fun event, and it's just grown, like everything else, it's just grown tremendously in Granbury, but.
Yeah, Granbury's known for its 4th of July parade celebration, that's for sure.
Yes.
Lee, one thing that I have observed, and I've said this, and you alluded to it when you were talking about the fundraisers at the Opera House when they were restoring it. I want to ask you if you would agree with this. I've observed that back in those days, 74, 75, when the restoration was going on, if you were going to be involved in something in the community, it would have been in the restoration of the Opera House. So would that be a correct statement? In other words, didn't have all of the things that we have today.
Yeah.
So if you were going to be helping the community develop, it'd been through the work there.
Yeah.
Would that be correct?
And at that time, there really was not anything going on like the restoration of the square, and just not the Opera House, but all the things that Mary Lou did and Janine Macon, and they were the two most influential people, other than Joe Nutt, of restoring the square. And it was basically like it was, you know, just like the old jail. And I'm not sure who restored the old jail, but you know, it started saving some of these old historic homes, and the city got involved in that. And I assume there'd be a lot more of these historic homes not here today if you know, if they had been involved in that process. And I can remember too, it's probably back it was in the mid-60s. Can't remember exactly when, but there was a storm that hit here and damaged the courthouse, and they actually took that tower off the courthouse. And I can remember the discussion, because I was just a kid, you know, 10 years old, so, but I can remember family discussions about them talking about tearing the courthouse down. I don't know how serious these were, but I remember that discussion going on about tearing the courthouse down and building a modern new courthouse. And you think about that now, it's like, wow, sure glad that didn't happen.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. But there was some discussion there, but they actually had a crane and took that tower off the courthouse.
I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah. And it was, I don't know, it seemed like it was off forever, but I don't know if it was a year or what, but you know, it took a long time to restore the courthouse. And if you've been up in the tower now, there's all kinds of steel structure up in there where they went in and rebuilt it, and so it's been shored up quite a bit. Don't know if it's hurricane proof or not, but it's certainly there is a lot of steel inside there now that you know, when they rebuilt that tower, or I don't think they rebuilt it, they reinforced it. I'm sure they had a lot of repair to it, repair and reinforcement.
Well, Lee, that's all I have.
I just
Yes,
reminded me
that's
of
about
one
all.
more thing, talking about old Granbury. But it wasn't a whole lot, this was back before the 4th of July parade, but when there would be festivals, and I can still remember, they would turn guineas loose on the square for a guinea chase. And his kids, I can remember my brother and I chasing those guineas. My brother was smaller than me, but there's little holes. If you go by the courthouse and look, and those have got to be about 1 foot square. And I can remember my brother crawling through one of those and going down to the basement and catching a guinea and coming back out. I couldn't get through the hole. He could. But then too, they also had grease pig races, and I can remember a kid older than me, a high school boy, because I was younger. I can remember catching one of those grease pigs and jumping in. I can remember. I just now thought about that for some reason. So that's the old Granbury. Guinea chases and wild pig races, and that's what used to happen on the square before everything got sophisticated.
Was that a July the 4th celebration, or?
Probably was.
Yeah.
Probably it was some celebration they had, and then, you know, the 4th of July would be the only thing they had here. But I just thought about that.
Well, the big one that we see today got all kicked off, I guess, in 1974.
Yeah.
When that group that you just mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Including Judge Meyer and Gene Kate and Charlie and Ken and Benny Hill and others. I guess that's when the real emphasis on making that the big celebration that it is now.
I think so.
I guess that's when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's changed a lot. And I would say all in all, it's definitely for the better. Of course, we're behind the 8 ball all the time on infrastructure as far as roadways and highways and getting into Granbury, but all in all, it's been good.
I agree. Yeah. I guess that's about it. Lee, we appreciate it, man.
Well,
Thank you, Lee. Very good.
Enjoyed visiting.